That doesn't really
I'm not
exist.
spewing anything. I'm just stating facts plainly.
I have lived experience. You don't. You're
I'm
trans.
alive.
What if one of your kids came out as trans? How would you
God
react
forbid.
to that?
I mean, I would obviously love my children, and I would try to do what's best for my children. And the best thing that I could do to be respectful and also to be conducive to their flourishing is to tell them the truth, which is that they're not really girls.
Trigger warning, I will not be referring to this person as a woman. Out of respect for my wife and my daughter, it's not going to happen. But anyways.
Asai Williams.
Welcome back. So Michael Knowles sits down with 25 pro-LGBTQ activists. This conversation got insane. But first, please subscribe to the channel and like the video. Help us get to 1,000 followers. But without further ado, let's get into it.
My first claim is that there is no such thing as same-sex marriage. Wow.
Nice to meet you,
How
Michael.
are you, sir? Nice to see you.
I am doing well. So your claim, what's the underlying philosophy of your claim?
Well, I guess the underlying historical part of my claim is that everyone for all of history everywhere until, and I'm being generous, 2001, agreed with my view that there's no such thing as same-sex marriage. So it seems to me that marriage intrinsically requires sexual difference. And furthermore, I think that any claim that marriage could be redefined to include same-sex marriage would render the term marriage incomprehensible.
Would you say that this is based off of natural law and how Thomas Aquinas defines natural law?
There's a good natural law argument for it, but I think it's based on more than that.
It's more than that.
Based on anthropology. Right?
Well, then would you say that marriage is a set of legal rights or is it a social role?
I think marriage is an institution. I think it's the fundamental political institution. I think, getting back to classical philosophy,
of course,
that man is fundamentally a social animal. So, I think at the bedrock of politics is the unit of the family, and, of course, intrinsic to the family is marriage.
So I would say that marriage is an institution that's designed by God. So God created marriage. If God created marriage and sex, then there must be a purpose to it. There must be a reason for him doing so. And there must be rules that revolve around it. So he is the one who decides how it works. And when we presuppose that there is a God, then we have to presuppose that sex and marriage have a purpose. Now, on the flip side, if you're going to say that there is no God, then marriage and sex mean nothing. They absolutely mean nothing. They can mean anything to anybody, or anybody can come up with a definition and no one could disagree with it. It's all based on your subjective thoughts and your subjective feelings on how things should be.
Marriage.
But all of those, especially with natural law, is just an assertion without evidence to back that claim, in that we see marriage over time in various cultures has been different things.
In which cultures would you say you see same-sex marriage?
I did not say same-sex marriage particularly, but the role of it when it comes to family, when it comes to the conditions. Because would you also say that if somebody is lawfully married, especially in the eyes of the church, they cannot be divorced and then married again?
Well, I oppose divorce and remarriage, but I'm making a more modest claim than that. I'm just saying that at its core, marriage necessarily involves two different sexes.
But how would you prove that? Because all of natural law is just this assertion. I can just as easily say the opposite, in that marriage is a set of legal rights.
You keep bringing up natural law. I'm actually speaking even more basically. I love natural law, but I'm speaking even more basically than that. It seems to me that the only way that marriage could have a meaning is if it involves different sexes.
But once again, you're defining that meaning. But marriage essentially is a set of rights conferred from two spouses when it comes to inheritance, when it comes to the rights of the children, when it comes to a number of about 1,100 federal and state rights.
Okay, then what you're getting at is interesting and might help us move forward. How would you define marriage?
I would say marriage is a legal contract between individuals when it comes to a set of property laws, when it comes to family law, when it comes to children, and many other rights that are conferred. And
Right, so that definition is subjective. So he gets to decide what marriage is. There's no ultimate authority above him that says what marriage is. And in his worldview, then that would mean that Michael's definition is perfectly fine too, because there's no ultimate authority above him or Michael to make the decision. This is why we need to presuppose that there is a God above us that makes these decisions for us.
My next claim is that transgenderism should be eradicated from public life entirely.
Hi.
Hello.
Blossom. She, her, hers powerhouse.
Blossom Powerhouse, lovely to meet you.
Yes. Go ahead. I want to know your ideology around transgenderism, something that doesn't exist. It just sounds more like conservative propaganda. So I kind of want to know a little bit more about what you're trying to communicate.
Okay, I think for all of history everywhere, people have understood the human person to have something to do with his body. So like your body has something to do with who you are. Now there is an alternative view, which is called Gnosticism. It's a view that our bodies don't really have anything to do with who we are, that the body is maybe even evil, and that our true selves have no connection to our bodies.
So I've never heard anybody put it like this, that transgenderism is a form of Gnosticism, this belief that the natural world is bad. The only good thing is the spiritual world, and that's the only important thing. And I've never heard this type of argument. It's very unique from Michael Knowles.
And I see in the transgender ideology a kind of Gnosticism that says that you could look like a man, you could have a man's genetics, you could have a man's genitals, you could have a man's everything. But if you feel on some deep level that you're really a woman, then you are really a woman. And I don't think that's true. And I think that the social effects of that are really bad because it leads to the depriving women of their legitimate rights. In some cases, it leads to rapes, notably in the last few years. And it also leads to women losing their sports competitions and their scholarships. And it's just disordered and false. And it also leads to more people adopting this identity, which leads to very high rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide. So it's bad for everyone, and it's not grounded in reality.
Oh, I don't even think you understand what you say sometimes. I don't think you even understand what you say because
Give an argument. Make an argument against what he just said. Don't just throw out ad hominems. Make an argument.
when we talk about these rape cases of women in the restroom, they're coming from cis men like you. So let's be very clear where it's
that's
coming
not
from.
true.
In
In 2021,
excuse me, do not interrupt a black
well,
trans woman
I'm just trying to correct you. Well, I would never interrupt a black woman.
No, thank you.
You made
Here's the thing about me as a black trans woman. I am not a threat to cis women, and I think it is harmful that you are going around here spewing that rhetoric, weaponizing this rhetoric against trans people.
Weaponizing facts?
Transgenderism does not exist. We as trans people exist. We are 1% of the population, and there is a lot of power in the trans identity because you are sitting here spewing something to me that doesn't really exist.
I'm not spewing anything. I'm just stating facts plainly.
I have lived experience. You don't, and you never will. But I do have a question.
I have
for
lived
you.
experience.
What if one of your
I'm alive.
What if one of your kids came out as trans? How would you
God
react
forbid.
to that?
I mean, I would.
Notice how he hasn't answered anything that Michael Knowles has said. He's skipping forward to the emotional argument. Hey, what if one of your kids? Answer the argument. Make an argument for your position.
Obviously love my children, and I
Okay.
would try to do what's best for my children. And the best thing that I could do to be respectful and also to be conducive to their flourishing is to tell them the truth, which is that they're not really girls.
Oh, come on. I can't even imagine your relationship with your children. No shade.
It's great. That's a great
I
relationship
just
with my
cannot even
children.
imagine that. But here's a
Yeah, Jubilee has to stop inviting him on these shows because what is the purpose of bringing him on? He doesn't provide any type of logical argument, or he doesn't make his side look better, just to say the least. He does not make the transgender ideology side look better. He makes them look worse.
Here's the reality. We exist. Again, people like you do not have the intellectual capacity to hold conversations like this because in a minute you're going to reduce this down to genitalia, and then we're going to have to shift it somewhere else because obviously
No, in
people
a
like
minute-
you, that's where they go, right?
In a minute, what I'm going to do is correct something you said. When you said that
Go ahead.
the rapes that have occurred in these bathrooms are cis men.
White cis men, I should say, actually.
Yeah, that isn't true. Loudoun County, 2021, the big case that actually ended up flipping the state was because there was a boy who wore a skirt, went into the girl's bathroom and raped a girl in a particularly hideous way. And you know what happened? Hold on, don't cut me off. You said you wouldn't.
A cis boy. It was not a trans woman. All y'all do
I don't
is
think
go back to cis boys. You're always talking about cis boys.
he was wearing-
I don't understand
he was
the
wearing-
fascination
he-
with trans bodies and what's happening in the bathroom. It is mostly happening
I think
from
you're
white,
filibustering
cis
because you
men.
don't want me to tell you what happened in the
filibuster
bathroom.
who?
Me. I think you're
Oh,
filibustering
child,
me.
no.
I think that you're
No.
distracting from the fact that a boy wearing a skirt in a girl's
A
bathroom raped a
boy,
girl.
but not a trans woman.
Well, there's no such thing as a trans woman.
Oh, yes,
so
it is.
that's
You're looking at one right now.
I'm looking
You're
at-
looking at me
I'm
right
looking
now.
at a-
with lived experience.
I'm looking
with
at a-
lived experience. You are looking at a trans woman who has been transitioning for over 20 years, who
Yeah.
has lived experience.
Yes,
You're
but-
talking to
but
an
your
activist here.
but your
You're
identity
talking to a
is not
debater here.
grounded
You're
in
talking to somebody
reality.
that's extreme. Oh, I am reality.
I'm not really talking to
In your
anyone because
head,
you keep
I'm not.
talking over
in
me.
your head, I'm not, but I am in reality.
Yeah.
I'm here in front of you right now talking to you.
The person with the wig on, the person basically wearing a costume is saying that he's living in reality. I mean, make this make sense. And by the way, trigger warning, I will not be referring to this person as a woman. Out of respect for my wife and my daughter, it's not going to happen. But anyways, how can you sit there with the best costume on that you have, say that you're living in reality? That does not make sense. You're not living in reality. You're living a lie. You're pretending to be something you're not. And that's just the God's honest truth.
You're confused about your identity.
No, you are confused
I'm not
at the fact that you don't really have any talking points right now because
Then why aren't you letting me speak?
You really don't.
If I have nothing to say, why aren't you letting me speak?
Put me on your show. How about that?
Then it would become your show, I think.
Oh, yeah, I should have a show. I should have a show.
In 2018, there were 2 rapes in bathrooms, and one in Wisconsin, one in Georgia.
From men,
also
cis
because
men,
of the
say
transgender identity.
But say it, cis men.
If you're
cis men.
if you're going to describe a boy who wears a skirt and goes into a girl's bathroom as a cis man, no, I didn't.
No, you are. This is the example that you run to. Past that, you have nothing.
I've just given you 3 examples.
Nothing.
I've given you 3 examples in recent years.
You don't. You've been struggling this entire
news to
time.
Me. Have I?
Yeah, you have.
I think the trans lady doth protest too much, methinks.
Bye. Goodbye.
Perhaps I'll see you on my show.
Yes, invite me.
Yeah.
Get my email. Tell your people to get my email address. How about that?
Yeah.
Good job.
There's no way they thought that was a good job. There's no way. These people cannot be this deluded to think that he did that good of a job.
Hello.
Hello? Hi.
Okay, so if we're going to think about women getting raped in bathrooms, right? It's a small percentage of trans people that are doing it. I'm not denying that that's happening because it is a reality and it's an awful thing for women to have to go through.
Yeah.
But then what are we doing about the men that are the 93% of sexual violence towards women?
No, hopefully arresting them and putting them in prison.
And what are you doing before that? Why are men the highest percentage for this? If it's such a bad thing for trans women to use the bathroom when a very, very, very small amount of women are being raped by trans women, why are we not having any sort of things before for men?
I think we try to enforce our laws and protect people from rape, and so we take
apparently not very well.
No, I think relatively well. We have a relatively low rate of these kinds of violent crimes compared to other places in the world. But in one area, we're talking about men forcing themselves into women's bathrooms. This is one area where we don't need to allow them to do that. It's a needless risk. It's based on a false view of reality and claims of rights, so-called rights, from confused men that infringe on the legitimate rights of women, not just in bathrooms, but also in sports competitions, also in scholarships, also in just about anywhere else in society. So I think that we have the right to insist upon some kind of reality, because I think not only will that be better for women, not only will that be better for society broadly, but that especially will be better for the individuals who are confused about their gender identity.
And how are you going to prevent trans women from using the female bathroom? How are you going to tell? What's the tea?
There are some giveaways,
okay.
Contrary to what the trans activists
and what are
say.
They?
Men who identify as women, you can usually tell.
And what are they? You can tell all you want.
Yeah, broad shoulders, Adam's apple, and
okay.
like the face, and yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You can tell. You can usually tell.
Usually.
Not all the time, but usually, yeah.
Okay. So if you can only usually tell, what are you going to do to prevent it?
Well, look, a man who doesn't even identify as trans, a man who's just a nefarious fellow could sneak into a woman's bathroom, and so we have to enforce the law.
93%.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be allowed simply off the principle. It doesn't matter whether or not you'll be able to tell if they're going into bathrooms or not. The problem is the principle. Men should not be allowed in women's spaces. Shouldn't be advocated for on the world's biggest stage. It's just that simple. Men should not be allowed in women's spaces. That's all. That's all there is to it.
What are you doing about men?
We should enforce the law against people who break it.
And what are you doing before that? Like, why is it a continuous pattern for men?
We teach
to do
people
this?
in class.
You're not teaching them very well, apparently. I mean, we have Republican parties who are literally putting a president who is a felon who has sexually assaulted people. What does that say to men?
Yeah, no one really buys that.
I bought it.
No one really buys that. No one seriously thinks that Donald Trump is a rapist. I know we pretend because the Democrats were trying to prosecute him 4 different ways and kicking him off.
If rape
because-
is such a bad thing, why don't you believe women when they say it's happening? Because you're not believing Trump
Well,
when he says that he didn't do it. Whatever, but you're not believing the woman.
Yeah, the claim you're
who said
making
that he
about
did.
Trump obviously was not criminally prosecuted. It comes from about 30 years ago from a woman who previously said that she likes rape and finds it, scintillating.
Gross.
And I know it's terrible. So anyway,
Yeah, no woman has ever said that.
That
Sorry.
woman did. The Trump's
Okay.
accuser literally said that to Anderson Cooper on CNN. But
Sure, I'm sure a fetish with like consenting adults might be different, but no woman knowingly goes out into this world and
No,
says, "I love to be raped."
I'm just
I want to be raped
using
by
the
men."
example you brought up, which is the accuser.
So I wasn't aware that person said that. That's insane if they actually said that. And the Jubilee fact check actually agreed with Michael just now.
Donald
so.
Trump. But anyway, no one really believes Trump's a rapist. And so your question is,
I
why
do.
don't we? Okay, I guess maybe some people in this room. You ask, why don't we just believe all women all the time? Well, I do think we should give a lot of deference to people who are accusing others of crimes. And so, we have courts of law to adjudicate these claims. So I don't know. I don't think women are incapable of lying, but I do think that we should protect their legitimate
Even
political
when
rights.
women do lie, though, it's a very, very, very small percentage. Point blank. Period. So. What again are you doing? Like, you care to claim about women so much because trans people in the bathroom is so scary.
My claim
What
here
are we doing
is
in other areas?
my actual claim here is that transgenderism is false and we should eradicate it from public life because it's harmful to everyone.
Okay,
That's my actual. If you want to talk about the claim, we're
let's
actually
start with that
debating.
then.
Yeah.
What does transgenderism in public look like to you?
It's allowing men to be treated for the purposes of the law as women. It's men taking 900 sports trophies from women in
Okay,
recent
that doesn't
years.
happen.
And
They didn't take 900.
They took 900. There's a report just came out from the United Nations, actually. 890 trophies and medals across 600 women who were competitors, across 29 different sports and 400 competitions. That came out like yesterday.
And they deserved them.
It didn't happen, and they deserve it.
Yeah, so this is the problem. They are okay with eliminated women's spaces. They are okay with eradicating the dignity that women have in sports, in winning these medals and competitions. This is the problem. This is why it should be pushed back against, because that's not okay. It's not okay that a woman who grows up as her life as a woman and goes through the struggles that women go through has to compete with a man who puts on a wig for a couple of seconds and says that he's a woman. It's insane.
Deserve them. Okay, that is the logic I hear from the pro-trans crowd. Yeah.
Thank you. They do deserve them
There you
because
go.
I'm sure they followed the specifications for the sport, and that's why they're there.
LGBTQ identity is a social contagion. We lost a chair.
Hi, girls. Hi.
Hello?
I guess I'd like to start off this conversation by pointing out some other people that share your opinion that LGBTQ plus people are a social contagion.
No, I didn't say that. I said LGBTQ identity is a
right.
social
Yeah,
contagion.
because that's a huge difference.
I think it's a major difference.
That is literally a big difference. That is a gigantic difference. Why are these people incapable of just dealing with the argument instead of making it seem like someone is a fascist, a bigot? Just deal with the argument that's presented.
Yeah. You know who else also would agree with you?
I'm guessing you're going to say Hitler or something.
And all of his friends. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Good job.
Do you know Hitler also drank water?
Okay.
Do you drink water? Do you drink water? Be honest.
Do you want to know how much water I drink?
How
Is that
much?
really the topic of this conversation?
Well, no, but it's a comparison between you and Hitler. And that's very scary,
Okay,
apparently.
well, we're not
and
talking
pertinent,
about
apparently.
consumption of aqua. We're talking about ideologies.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
And there has been a large uptick in people who share the opinion that certain ideologies, certain racial backgrounds are contagions. And there's a lot of danger in that. I am a nurse. My background and my education has provided me with the privilege of being exposed to people of all backgrounds, people of all belief systems. I think that if we're going to talk about social contagions, I think we should start off by the ones that have positive and negative impacts on society, because I could just as much say that hatred and bigotry are social contagions, that toxic masculinity is a social contagion. That
Are you saying that I'm a sort of pinnacle of masculinity?
No, I wouldn't say that.
All right, then I'm not toxic.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. I could also say a myriad of other things. When you say that LGBTQ plus identities are a social contagion, would you then venture to also say that you would like to see people like me and the rest of the people in this room eradicated?
No, that would be quite a leap. I'm just.
Is it a leap?
I think so. I'm
Okay.
observing a pretty basic social phenomenon, which is that in the 90s, about 1 to 3% of Americans identified as LGBTQ. And then in 2012, about 3.5% identified as LGBTQ. Fast forward to 2020, it was about 5.5%. Fast forward to 2024, so really, really close, it was 7.2%. And now there's a number from NBC News, says that 30% of Gen Z identifies as LGBTQ. So I guess my observation is just either there's something in the water turning the frogs gay, or there's something,
Jones.
yes,
Okay.
which actually, oddly enough, there was a Yale study that kind of proved that, but it's a topic for another
Luckily,
time.
they got rid of the DEI program at the EPA that was turning the frogs gay.
This is good. That's good. The EPA also discovered that. We're getting sidetracked. Either there's something in the water turning the frogs gay, or there's something social and cultural going on that would lead to that huge increase in the number of people. There was a study just came out of University of York yesterday that showed a 50-fold increase in children who think they're the wrong gender over the last 10 years. How do you explain that if it's not a social phenomenon?
I would love to speak to that actually, because one of the jobs I've worked as a nurse is as a nurse at a summer camp for trans teens. I've worked with hundreds of trans teens. I think that when we're talking about how people identify, how comfortable they are to identify the way that they identify, and their ability to assert themselves in that identity, the social environment that surrounds them can either hinder that or allow them to embrace themselves.
So are you saying, I'm trying to...
Yeah, to anybody with eyes, it's obvious that there is a social contagion because it's being pushed. It's being celebrated on TV and movies and in media that this type of ideology is becoming popular and people are just picking it up. It isn't that, all of a sudden people aren't being oppressed anymore and now they're finally okay with coming out. If you're saying that, then you're saying that secretly in America, 20% or whatever the percentage of people were LGBTQ, they just didn't act on it. They just have the ability to suppress their LGBTQ urges in order to live in society, which is kind of insane if you're saying that this thing can be controlled. That's what you're saying, that you can control these urges, which is, by the way, the Christian view, that you're able to control these urges. It's obviously a contagion. People are going to fall into these roles more. I mean, there's no argument you can make against this. I mean, if you notice, one of the guys in the background said left-handedness. So he's making the argument that, well, when we stopped forcing people to write with their right hand, left-handedness exploded. Basically, when people had the freedom to choose which hand to write with, then more people started writing with their left hand. But that's literally making the same argument both ways. You're saying that someone can be convinced to not be a part of the LGBTQ community, but then you're saying it's intrinsic to you, that it's just a part of you, that you can't help it. Those two arguments are literally the opposite. You can't make those two arguments at the same time. So the only logical conclusion is that it's a social contagion, that once it's being pushed in media, on social media, all over the place, that people are going to adopt it. People are going to adopt this ideology and become more like it. I want you to see what happens when you don't just echo the same talking points that everybody else echoes. Watch what happens when this LGBTQ activist actually speaks out against the community and says something that is opposite of what everybody should believe.
Be banned. That's your claim, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I can meet some middle ground with you. Sorry, guys. I think pride has kind of became a bad representation of what our community is.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not all just like sex toys and leather.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, which is why I think most conservatives kind of are completely on the other side. It's like the pendulum.
Look at all the flags go up. Look at all the flags go up. Now, I'm going to explain what this is in a moment, but watch what happens.
Pendulum swing? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, so like one side of the coin is pretty much that, LGBT, we have fought so hard for our rights, we kind of leaned so far one way, whereas like now, we've kind of accepted too much, right? As far as like, we're so open-minded that
our brains fell out.
You could say that,
yeah.
In some aspect. However, it doesn't take away the fact that, there's still gay people that exist. I don't think Pride Parade should be banned. However, I think we should portray a different a different image
This is the most reasonable person that sat down in this whole entire video.
of it.
Yeah,
Because-
yeah, I think you're quite right. You know, for all of history and everywhere in the world, there have been people who are a little odd, you know, or they have desires that are not the mainstream. And so I get it. I'm not saying we need to like totally deny that or, you know, toss people out of society or anything. It's just, I said we should eradicate the transgender ideology. Yeah, which is a false account of human nature. But yeah, I think you can. If you can separate the war on poverty from, you know, a war on poor people, I think you probably could.
So notice what happened. When you're a part of this community, it's almost as if it's a religion. You cannot speak out against the core doctrine of this religion. You have to repeat the same talking points that everybody's repeating. If you go against it, then you're kicked out. You're pushed to the side, as they did to this young lady here, just for disagreeing. Just for disagreeing and having a reasonable in the middle position that, hey, some of these parades are absolutely disgusting and that some of the stuff going on there shouldn't be going on there, and we're accepting too much. And you saw the faces in the room start to you know, look at her like she's crazy, but she's literally the most reasonable person that sat down this whole entire video. But anyways, let me know what you think down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Until next time, God bless.